Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Social Disruption Network. My name is Gil. We have Sean and we have David. Sean's out of North Carolina. And David, where do you live?
Shreveport, Louisiana.
Well, first topic tonight I'd like to use is obviously Donald Trump has made a big stink about the illegal immigration stuff. He passed that executive action, which within a matter of days was promptly taken out by a lower court judge. Today, actually a few days ago, they went before a district judge, and they waited for the determination by that judge. A 3-judge panel came back today not in his favor, that he cannot reinstate that ban. So Donald Trump has now sworn that he is going to take it to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, which is his right. So the question is it appropriate by law for a lower court judge to tell Donald Trump that he can or cannot enforce a ban on travel from countries that harbor and encourage terrorism? Sean, what do you think, my friend?
It's absolutely appropriate. I mean, that's the whole reason for the separation of powers in the Constitution, right? I would take some issue with the idea of countries harboring terrorists. I think that defining terrorists is something that's complicated, and the idea that nation states would harbor terrorists is also problematic. I mean, that's another issue. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, the courts are there to interpret the law, and, you know, when one branch of the government oversteps their bounds, or, you know, does something that's in violation of the Constitution, courts are there to keep things in check. Separation, I mean, what's it called? Like checks and balances, right? Yeah.
Checks and balances, 3 separate but equal branches of government. However, David, question still remains. Do you think that they have the power to tell Donald Trump, as president, whether he can or cannot institute a ban on any country in the world that he feels is a danger to the well-being of American citizens and the homeland, America itself? What do you think, David?
If it's a federal judge, he has to. Because your problem remains is there's only one Supreme Court, and they're not in session 24 hours a day. So you have to have a lower court that's a federal court. I mean, you can't go down to your local city municipal and get and have it stopped. But a federal court has to be able to have that power, because you have to have something to stop him from issuing executive orders no matter what. I mean, if he says you can't wear red on Friday and it's Thursday, you can't wait till Monday when the Supreme Court comes back into it. And that's for any, federal mandate. You have to give the courts time to actually review it. Once he hits the Supreme Court says, no, he can do that, then there's nothing a lower court can do, because the Supreme Court is the ultimate law of the land.
Okay,
so do they have that right? Yes, they have to. It's only way you can survive in a democracy.
Well, I would like to say that I think that any court does not have a right in this particular case, simply because the Immigration and Nationality Act, which was passed in 1952, gives the president, by constitutional authority, the express right to do what he just did. Now, there are some pundits who are saying that on one side, they're saying that he doesn't have to abide by that law or by the judgment of the courts. And then there are the others, of course, on the more liberal side, who are saying that he does have to abide by it. Now, I personally don't think that he should have to abide by it, simply because it is a right and an authority that is granted to him by the Constitution of the United States of America. The second question I'd like to ask you is, how do you feel about the court denying his immigration ban?
Well, I guess we're going to go in the same order. Is that okay? Or
yeah, that's the same. Right, that's fine, Sean.
Okay.
Go right ahead, my friend.
Yeah, so I do want to be clear that I think that any statute is still going to be subject to the limitations put on it by or put on them by the Equal Protection Clause, which would state that you can't discriminate against anyone based on their nationality or ethnicity or religion. So I think that it's pretty clear that there's at least some controversy over whether the nations that are on that list, if people being denied from those countries are being denied on either the basis of nationality, ethnicity, or religion, or some combination thereof. As far as how I feel about it, I mean, for basically that reason, I think that that it's a good thing. I don't think that we need to be telling the world that we're going to reject people if they're not from the right country, or if they're not of the right religion, or if they're not of the right ethnicity. If somebody doesn't look the way that we want them to look, or whatever the case may be, that's not, or isn't from a place that we like for whatever reason, that's not a good reason to treat them any differently from anyone else. It'd be one thing.
But is it a good reason? Is it a good reason that nations that are clear and by most consensus, whether it be a liberal administration or a conservative administration, or any of those countries, is it okay for Donald Trump, who is not limiting people because of nationality or religion, to say that these countries have to get on board with a more universal clearance for their citizens before we allow them to come into the country?
So I think that is the problem, is that it's not universal. It'd be one thing if people from Sweden had to go through this same sort of thing. If he put an absolute ban on all travel coming into America from all over the world for the next 90 days, then I don't think there's a problem with that.
But these countries have shown a propensity for terrorist harboring and training facilities. Their immigration procedures are not up to code with the rest of the world. So I don't personally see the problem. Now, I agree with you. If we say that all Muslims cannot come into the country, I would be outright upset about that also. But I do believe that he has the right to give a 90-day ban until we can get them cleared and their systems more up to date.
I think that I can understand your argument,
right?
But if we look at the Equal Protection Clause, what country someone's from is a specific aspect of that clause, and it says that the United States we can't make decisions about people or what they can and can't do on the basis of what country they're from. That's a specific aspect of that that all laws are just subject to. So again, I mean, and the other point that I would make is just that the idea of terrorism kind of being more associated with some countries than others, we can say that there's some truth in that for sure, but there's not a country on earth where there's not systematic violence or terrorism.
Yeah, but to be fair, there are countries that are more predominantly so. I mean, every country, like America, going to harbor terrorists. Every country does. We've had our own domestic terrorists, okay, which had nothing to do. Some of which had nothing to do with religion. It was just an agenda, okay. But where does common sense play into this? Where? I think
this is probably time for David to get in here.
I'm sorry, David. You can cut in at any point, man. Everybody.
You're fine.
Everybody had their minute, you know. So now it's our free base. Let's go with, well, that's a bad word, free base. Let's go for free for all. How about that?
Well, my feeling of it is I can understand you wanting to ban it from some countries, but the problem you run into, you still have to vet the people coming in. And I think that's kind of where Donald Trump's being misplaced here. It's like, I'm perfectly fine if you do background checks and you do full and complete background checks on somebody from Syria, because you got Muslims in Britain. There's a huge minority in Britain of Muslims. You've got Muslims all over France. You've got Muslims in Belgium. I mean, there's a Muslim population in Canada. So it's not like if you ban everybody from Syria, you're going to be safe. The 9/11 hijackers were not from Syria. They were from Saudi Arabia, which is not on the ban list. But but you can't exactly profile Muslims. I know Muslim people. I'm not trying to be that person, but I have Muslim friends. But you can't sit there and just say, if you're from this country, you can't come in for 90 days. You have to vet them. You have to make sure that if they're coming in for legal purposes.
But you see,
no matter what country they're from.
Understood. But those countries also don't have their standards up to par with what we would consider an up-to-date process or a thorough process for allowing their citizens to come to America. So in the absence of him wording everything correctly, there's still the threat of these people not having the proper background checks and clearances.
No, but see, here's the thing. No, that's an excuse. Saying it's not worded correctly is an excuse.
Not on my part.
You cannot be president. You cannot have an attorney general. You cannot have an entire department set up for immigration and say, well, I just didn't word it right. You have to word it correctly. You have to spell out what you mean. That's part of the reason why whenever you go in to read the laws, you've got 18,000 lawyers that are going to go in and reinterpret it.
Isn't it better to be safe than sorry? 90 days.
Depends on how safe you are.
90 days. 90 days. That's all. 90 days. Wouldn't it be better to be safe than sorry? What if
David makes a good point.
What if he has information that we don't have, that he's privy to, that suggests there's an enhanced threat in those 7 countries?
Define how safe you want to give up. I mean, do you want to be, you got some cities that's getting like London, where you've got cops on every corner, you've got metal detectors everywhere.
But I don't live in London. I live in America, and I know what the problems are here. The problems here, London, England is like a state in America. I mean, literally. When you look at the borders of the United States of America, it would be like Texas, London, England. England is like protecting Texas, okay? Literally. These countries are the size of our states. That's it. The United States of America encompasses all of Europe and then some. So every state here is the size of a country there. We have a much larger issue, a much larger border. They can talk about protecting England all day long. That's a much different issue than us. We have a massive, expansive border that needs to be protected. Now, that's not to mention the southern border. Let's just mention these people who want to come in through legal means, whether it be travel by plane, by ship, by luxury line, or whatever it may be. If they don't have the proper clearances and background checks, I feel as though it's a Trojan horse, just letting them in.
So I think David made a good point.
Okay.
In that we've got, what is it? Is it 7 countries? Is that right?
7 countries, yeah.
There are a lot of the terrorists that we've seen. We have a very interesting relationship with Saudi Arabia, right? This is kind of like the heart of darkness in some ways. Like the Wahhabist movement in Saudi Arabia, with whom we're allied. It's not any big secret at this point that a lot of the terrorism that has been committed has been done with our own weapons, has been done with funds that have come from us and through Saudi Arabia and other places.
Our own money and funded by the Saudis.
So the fact is that there's a kind of arbitrariness to this list of 7 countries. I think I actually wouldn't have a problem if Donald Trump or whoever was president, in this case it's Donald Trump. So if Donald Trump said, we're not going to let anybody into the country for 90 days. Because the fact is that, not having Saudi Arabia on the list, not having, I don't even remember what countries are on the list, but, there are lots of countries where there's lots of terrorist activity, including, there are plenty of terrorist cells in Europe,
okay, so devil's advocate,
all over the world.
Devil's advocate, would it be okay to just say an immediate immigration ban across the board, period?
That's what I'm saying.
90 days.